Hey everybody, this is Perch, and this is kind of perfunctory news. We knew this, or all the signs were there. Interestingly enough, I think a couple of us mentioned that we thought it was highly likely that Jonathan Hickman would be bowing out of the X-Men at the end of the year. I remember being on Wes's show. I remember taking a lot of heat from that, including from a lot of the people at the Xavier Files site was really, really pissy about that comment. So the news, of course, coming from Entertainment Weekly, Inferno will be Jonathan Hickman's last X-Men comic for now. Obviously, he is going to Substack, and he's doing doing kind of content there. What is interestingly kind of stated is that Jonathan Hickman will be staying with Marvel, or at least will be doing something else in the future, or the door is open for more Marvel content. So obviously Hickman's attention starting, I think, at the beginning of the year, because Inferno is going to run, if it comes out on time, will run through the end of this year, 2021. He'll then be shifting over to do Three Moons, Three Worlds with Mike Del Mundo, Mike Huddleston, Teenie Howard, kind of the team that is working on there. And, Hickman's words exactly: Marvel doesn't really pay me to just write ongoing monthly books. There's an expectation for me to write bigger books that have a wider reach than that. In an effort to facilitate both things, we've all spent the last 6 months or so reorienting the line, meaning the House of X, or the X-Men line, me creating Inferno to assist with that, and then bringing in some new writers to add to the existing team, then plan for the next several years of X books. So after Inferno, I'll be leaving to go work on my next big Marvel thing. And starting in January, the X line will rocket forward, starting with a weekly series that leads into the very cool, refocused line of books. Yes, it's taken us a little while to get everything assembled correctly, but the end result, everything that's coming after Inferno, is going to be pretty great. Okay, so let's back up a second. So we've learned a couple things there. So number one, Jonathan Hickman is staying with Marvel and will do some kind of big special project. Now, in fairness, this is similar language that's been used for people like Chris Claremont and others when they're, they don't want to let the creator kind of go off into the wind, but they don't really have a plan for what they will do. So what will Hickman do? I mean, he's done the Avengers, he's done X-Men. What comes next? Nobody knows. So maybe he has a big thing, maybe he doesn't. We'll see. But it makes sense he's going to stay, attached to the Marvel lineup as a consultant, if nothing else. So, he'll get to go off after his next big thing. Meanwhile, the X-Men lineup is going to be shepherded under new people. I think there's still a few new people that are coming into the mix that we haven't heard. But based on also Leah Williams' interview that she gave, it feels like the X-Men is going to drift toward being more editorially driven than it was before. Maybe some of this X-Slack type stuff kind of goes away. It feels like an ending of sorts to that. We know Teenie Howard is going to work with Hickman in his Three Moons, Three Worlds Substack project. It certainly feels like Leah Williams is, based on her comments, it's questionable what she's going to be doing in the future. She also teased Substack that she'll be going to. So it feels like Gary Duggan, Ben Percy, Vita Ayala, those are the people really, probably Al Ewing to some extent, although he has a Substack. Feels like, that's the direction things are kind of meandering toward. The other thing that we heard from there was that in January, post Inferno, the X line will have a weekly series of sorts, which will lead into a very cool refocused line of books. So it sounds like we're going to get a weekly series for a bit of time, and then we're going to get, if I am reading the tea leaves correctly, of a very cool refocused line of books. That means relaunched. It just typically when Marvel says refocused line of books, that means we're going to cancel them all and start at number ones. Now, X-Men has just relaunched. So, whether that's the case with that or not, but it feels like we are at an ending of sorts, and that's where we're at. And so people are finally admitting out loud that Hickman, yes, has been bowing out, that since House of X, Powers of 10, and then kind of the slowdown of Hickman on the regular X-Men comic. Anyway, that this is an ending of sorts. Now, Hickman, in this interview for Entertainment Weekly, does go on to say that plans changed entirely. When I pitched the X-Men story, I pitched a very big, very broad 3-act, 3-event narrative, the first of which was House of X. And while this loosely worked as a 3-year plan, I told Marvel up front that I honestly had no idea of how long the first plan would last, because there were a lot of interesting ideas that I had seeded that other creators wanted to play with, and so we left it open-ended. I was also pretty clear that with all the writers that came into the office, what the initial 3-act plan was, so no one would be surprised when it was time for the line to pivot. So basically, kind of what this sounds like is House of X, Powers of 10 was the, was the first act, if you will, or was this first moment. And then he mentions during the pandemic, when the time came for me to start pointing things toward writing the second act event, I asked everyone if they were ready for me to do that, and to a man, I don't know why he says it that way, to a man, come on, Hickman. Everybody wanted to stay in the first act. It was really interesting because I appreciated House of X resonated with them to the extent they didn't want it to end, but the reality was that I knew I would be leaving the line early then. Okay. So basically, this kind of infers that right about the time we had 10 of Swords, so about a year in, the idea was that we'd be out of this, the mutant, party and drug business going on and hanging out at the Tiki Bar would be kind of winding to a close and be in this second act. It now feels like Inferno is kind of that second act. And that's actually what, basically we're getting that, and then we're going to get this relaunched new kind of status quo and everything else. And then, who knows what happens with the third act, or if it ever comes, or if it just is going on forever. Anyway, definitely an interesting dynamic there, but not shocking that basically we're getting the conclusion of Hickman's time in the X-Men. It was clear and apparent to everyone except those who really didn't want to believe it. It's interesting to contrast that with Leah Williams, who did make the comment that with the trial of Magneto, that her initial plans were to do that within the pages of X Factor, and that was kind of editorially, overridden, and they canceled the series in part because it was just lower sales, and in part because, they wanted to do this trial of Magneto somewhere else. And then she really kind of laid out some kind of core disagreements of where she wanted to take the title versus where the collective or editorial want to take the title. So it's interesting if you look at the two things together with Jonathan Hickman's statements about kind of the writers that were brought in wanted to just stay longer in it. You talk to Leah Williams, she talks about how she wanted to kind of keep her story going longer, but then it was interrupted. So there are definitely some there's some differing opinions here. And I think that the story that will come out, my prediction over the next, year or two, will be that there was a decent amount of conflict between the editorial, Jordan White, and some of the groups, maybe Tom Brevoort above it, and maybe management, and kind of what Hickman and maybe some of the writers wanted to do. We're going to hear about this conflict at some point. It's inevitable that we are going to get this. This more of this story will come out. Maybe on somebody's Substack, they'll spill all the laundry. So anyway. An interesting time, a very interesting time in comics right now. What do you think Hickman's next project would be? What would you like it to be? If it's me picking, I would love to see Hickman take something that is more along the lines of when he came in to do Fantastic Four. In fact, hell, put him back on Fantastic Four. Save us from what's currently going on. But sorry, that's my own personal opinion there. But I would love to see Hickman do something smaller where he could really world build and really kind of get a kind of cool new thing going with a comic, as opposed to like dumping him back into the Avengers, or kind of the corners of the Marvel universe do not have a ton of spaces left. And I'd love to see some real effort put toward, I don't know, like maybe you should try that street level hero thing again. There's a lot of things you can do, but my question for you, where would you like to see Hickman go? Hickman is bowing out of the X-Men line. He's done. Rumors are true. There you have it. We're over. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.